part of the Anatomy of Movement or the Language of Movement series, and we're going to do our practice that incorporates scapular movements or shoulder blade movements. We start out in seated with the arms down to the sides. When we're in this position from right about halfway up, we're in anatomical position. We have the head in neutral, the cervical spine is in neutral, the arms are down in neutral, and we'll start to incorporate some pure movements of the scapula. I'm going to take an inhale and elevate the scapula, closing off the space between my shoulder and my neck. As I draw down, I come back into neutral. From neutral, I'm going to pull down just a bit more, and it feels like I'm trying to stretch my neck up to the ceiling, but my shoulder blades are going down into depression. So it's inhale, pull into scapular elevation, exhale, pull down into scapular depression. It's nice to feel that up and down glide as the scapula just kind of move up and down on the back of the rib cage. There are muscles all around the scapula that hold it in place and create stability, but allow a lot of movement. So then next I'm going to do scapular protraction and retraction, forward and back. I'm going to protract, spread them out to the sides, and retract, pull them back together like I'm pinching my shoulder blades together. So it's protraction as I exhale. Inhale, front of the body fills up with air, shoulder blades squeeze back. Exhale, protraction. Inhale, retraction. Forward and back movement. Okay, then I like to put those two movements together into a shoulder circle. It goes scapular elevation, elevation and retraction, depression and retraction, and then protraction, elevation, retraction, depression. Creates that kind of circular movement. So you can think of it that way. Protraction, elevation, retraction, depression. Creating the 4 points of that movement. And then you can reverse it and go the other way. But most of the time, I really like to do shoulder circles backwards because the shoulders migrate forward anyway. We want to train them that they're going back and down. Some of the movements that we use in our yoga practice that incorporate this, we'll go inhale, reach out front, and then exhale, pull the elbows back. When you start to bring the arms into it, of course, the humerus and the scapula are attached at the shoulder joint, so they follow each other. When the arm moves, you're going to get some good movement with your scapula. Scapular protraction, scapular retraction. Now when I swing my arms up, we get into that third series of movements that our scapula does. It's upward rotation and downward rotation. So you're thinking, here's the scapula on the back. When my arm reaches up, it has to swing out to the side to allow full movement of my arm up to the front. And same thing if I go out to the side. So scapulas are down, they're depressed, they're retracted. And then I'm going to swing out to the side. My scapula is following my arm out and up, and then swinging down. Okay, so it's the arm comes up, the scapula moves into upward rotation, a little bit of elevation. We don't want to over elevate. And then downward rotation. Okay, then bring your fingertips together, and we're going to push the palms out and away. Start to round the back and protract the shoulder blades. Inhale, straight up. Exhale, come down and protract. So what you're going to see here is a lot of times when we move into flexion with the thoracic spine, we start to bend the upper back. The scapulas are going to protract at the same time. They kind of follow each other with that movement. And you can see I'm going into a little bit of neck flexion too, a little bit of cervical protraction. And then as I come up, the head follows into some cervical extension, a scapular protraction. We have a little scapular elevation and upward rotation because the arms are up. Let's follow that into cat and cow. So we used cat and cow to look at the neck for flexion and extension, but since there's movement in the thoracic spine or the upper back, we also have movement in the scapula. So here I am in neutral with the scapula. They're pretty flat on the back of my rib cage. And then I'm just going to protract and push the floor away. Notice that my elbows aren't moving at all. Now retract and pinch the shoulder blades together. Try to keep the arms still. What'll happen is you'll want to bend your elbows because it makes the movement feel easier. It's much more challenging to isolate the movement of the scapula in the back of the rib cage, but it's worth the challenge because it's going to help you when you're doing any kind of weight bearing through the arms. Protraction, get very round and hollow through the front of the chest. The collarbones are kind of squished in, and then draw the collarbones out to the sides, pull your shoulder blades back. Protraction, retraction. Now we usually sit somewhere in between there. There's a straight line across the chest and a straight line across the back. We don't want either one to be rounded or bowed. And there's neutral. So let's go into cat and cow. In my cat, I start to protract the shoulders. I'm really pushing into the floor, rounding my upper back. My neck follows into flexion. I inhale, my shoulder blades retract, I'm pulling them back, and I move into cervical extension. Scapular protraction, cervical flexion. Scapular retraction, cervical extension. Cat and cow. And one last one like that. Okay. So just remember, anytime that your arm is moving, your scapula has to go with it. There has to be some movement to accommodate all those different motions that our arm is able to do. But we can stabilize the arms and just isolate the movement in the scapula. And you want to get used to doing that because as you go into other poses, as you go into more complicated movements, arm balances, downward facing dog, you're going to want to adjust and stabilize your scapula. So you want to have a feel for what muscles actually cause elevation and depression, what muscles cause protraction and retraction, so that you can think about the movement you're trying to do and then activate those key muscles to make the movement happen. Okay, hopefully that has helped you understand the movements of the scapula. Namaste.